Hi guys, and welcome to another episode of Charlie Chapters. Today we are reading the first chapter of The Gallery by Laura Marx Fitzgerald. It's a great story. It's got some surprises and some twists and turns, and I hope you like hearing the first chapter.
The Gallery by Laura Marx Fitzgerald. Chapter 1, May 2016. One of the tabloid papers, the New York Yodel, has a midsection where they feature some poor sap who's hung around long enough to make it to 100. This time, that poor sap is me. Last week, the paper sent this young whip of a girl to interview me. She bounced around the linoleum room, poking around the photos on my bureau. "Is she awake?" she asked Jolene, the day nurse, like I wasn't even there. And as soon as I stirred, she started shouting questions like, "What's the secret to happiness?" in my ear. Like living to 100 makes you happy and not creaky and constipated. I just gave the addled smile I use to make people think I'm senile and pointed lamely to my throat. I haven't been able to speak for 30 years since I had my voice box removed. Cancer of the larynx. Don't smoke, kids. "Oh, right," the young reporter ducked her head. "I forgot. Well, here." She thrust a legal pad and a pen into my lap. "You can write the answers." I held up my gnarled hands and shrugged. Arthritis. "Oh." She gingerly picked up the pad and pen again, afraid to brush against my paper-thin skin. Back they went into this large satchel like newsboys used to carry. "Do you know," she said, rustling around for something else, "I looked you up in our archives and I found you. Martha O'Doyle, right? I checked the dates. This must be you." She pulled out a regular sheet of paper, but printed on it was an old newspaper article. It was the last time I was in the papers, 87 years ago. I recognized the headline. March 26, 1929. Bomb kills newspaper tycoon and his wild rose. Priceless art collection destroyed. Rose battier than a church bell, says maid. New York society was rocked last night by a bomb that exploded just past midnight in the home of newspaper tycoon J. Archer Sewell. Killed in the blast were both Mr. Sewell and his wife, the former Rose Pritchard, heiress to the Union Eastern Railroad fortune. The couple's lavish Fifth Avenue mansion, once site of some of society's most opulent entertainments, was destroyed. Lost, too, was Mrs. Sewell's art collection, described as unrivaled by experts and glimpsed only by guests of the increasingly reclusive Sewell family. The collection, which included paintings by great artists like Rembrandt, Caravaggio, Courbet, as well as living painters like the modern sensation Pablo Picasso, was speculated to be worth millions. As of this morning, it is an ash heap. The attack came as no surprise to J. Archer Sewell's detractors. As publisher of this newspaper's rival, the Daily Standard, Sewell was known as a staunch defender of traditional American values in today's rocky times. His hard-charging rhetoric made him not a few enemies, especially among immigrants, anarchists, and other targets of his paper's wrath. Yet the drawing rooms of Fifth Avenue are abuzz that Wild Rose herself might have been behind the bombing. The former Miss Pritchard's outrageous teenaged antics are familiar to the Yodel's more faithful readers. The young heiress was rumored to have suffered a mental breakdown shortly after her marriage. Sources close to the heiress say that her behavior had become increasingly erratic, and in recent years she often refused to leave her rooms. Mrs. Sewell's more recent outbursts were captured in this very paper. But was this former debutante capable of such an act of such a shocking violence? "I wouldn't put it past her," shared Martha O'Doyle, a young housemaid of Irish extraction. "She was nuttier than a fruitcake, always howling in her room like a right lunatic. If you ask me, she set that bomb off herself." "She shouldn't have been locked up in a madhouse," continued the outspoken young Colleen. "It was only through Mr. Sewell's kindness, God bless him, that she could remain in her home with all her comforts about her." Here young Martha stopped to wipe her eyes. "He was a true gentleman, Mr. Sewell was. However, detectives are investigating all possible suspects, including members of the Sewell household staff, one of whom is said to have recently fled the country. Police were unable to share more details, but have asked readers to come forward with any information that might aid their investigation." I let the page flutter to my lap. Like most stories in the paper, it was full of lies. "I've been reading up on the bombing. Did you know you're the only living witness?" the girl reporter said breathlessly, her pen at the ready. "The only one who knows what really happened." I shrugged again. She heaved a frustrated sigh, her schemes to move off the back page human interest stories clearly roadblocked. "I mean, you're 100 years old. You won't last forever." Here I pretended to fall asleep, which I sometimes do in the middle of conversations anyway. By the way she poked my arm with her finger, I could tell she thought I had joined the heavenly choir. When I heard her footsteps die away, I opened my eyes again. Her business card was resting on my lap. Today, a week later, the morning staff crowded around my bed singing happy birthday, and Jolene brought me the paper. "Now look at you, Miss O'Doyle. You just as pretty as ever," she said as she opened up to my photo. "Local last licks 100. Miss Martha O'Doyle, lifelong Brooklyn resident and longtime bon vivant, raises a glass of bubbly to celebrate her 100th. She credits her astonishing longevity to always looking on the bright side." I didn't say any of that. The picture shows me sitting in my wheelchair with a glass of champagne the girl reporter stuck in my hand. I didn't drink that either. All I can take are these energy shakes now. "And what a nice smile," continued Jolene, "like a beauty queen." I was just trying to stifle a belch, which was nice of me, I thought, because usually I don't bother. I gave the paper back to Jolene and had her wheel me over to the window. Most folks at Shaded Acres, actually a sun-blasted high-rise surrounded by acres of Brooklyn concrete, won't take rooms on the cemetery side. But I requested this side for the same reason I always ride in the front seat. I like to see where I'm going. I can see where I've been, too, because from my window I can make out Rose's final resting place on the hill. Even though it's surrounded by auto body shops today, Greenwood Cemetery was once the final destination of the rich and fancy, and lucky for me those folks paid their gardens in perpetuity. At this time of year, I have front row seats to the spectacle. First the shock of yellow forsythia against the bleak gray sky, then the Japanese magnolias, the cherry blossoms, the lilacs. After the grand finale, the climbing roses, the summer leaves fill in like a curtain coming down on a show. And I have to wait until winter strips the place bare before I catch sight of the Pritchard family plot again. Every spring, it's like Rose is signaling me in this blooming and dying Morse code. Meet me here. That girl reporter was right. This would likely be my last spring show, my last message from Rose, my last chance to tell my story. The next day, I got one of those youngster volunteers to show me how the computers work. He brought me the kind that folds up and showed me how to open a page, type on it, erase my mistakes. The day after that, I rubbed some Bengay into my hands, gave up my Jell-O to St. Peter for a little more longevity, and with my crooked fingers, I looked for the truth among the keys.
Thanks for joining us for today's chapter. If you enjoyed it, you can check it out as an ebook on our catalog. Have a good weekend.